All right, so I finally got a comment that I was kind of expecting, and it came from someone who, like many of you watching me, probably have been a little concerned about this because of what you've been taught, told, trained, practiced, versus what you see me doing, which is in most of my videos, including the thumbnails of most of my videos. You don't have to watch the videos. You'll see me with bare hand on bare blade. A lot. And you've probably been taught that's taboo or potentially just going to rust the crap out of your sword and all this other stuff. Let's talk about the realities of that, shall we? I need to separate this conversation, however, into 4 different topics to address individually. The first of which is tradition. The second of which is etiquette. The third is practicality. And the fourth is technique. So getting tradition out of the way. Well, I told you in other videos that I'm not a big fan of tradition. However, if I'm with someone who is, I will respect that and follow along accordingly. I'm not a total dick. But as the saying goes, understand the ways of others, honor first your own. So, yeah. But we then need to cross over into etiquette pretty immediately here. This is my sword. I don't need anybody's permission to touch it, and also I have a certain familiarity with not only the sword and the steel, but what it's treated with and how often and how it's cleaned. So that's advantage me. If we're talking about somebody else's sword, though, etiquette, I'm not going to even get close to the thing within breathing distance without permission. I'm not going to pick it up without permission. I'm not going to draw it even part way out of the scabbard without permission. I'm not going to draw it all the way out of the scabbard without permission. I'm not going to do anything with it in terms of moving it around or cutting with it without permission. And I am probably guaranteed to never, ever, ever touch the blade with bare skin. I will get a glove, I will get a cloth, I will use my sleeve. I will also go as far as not speaking loudly to risk spraying on the blade. I will lower my voice. I will keep it away from my face so I don't breathe on it. Etiquette. The worst damage I've ever had done rust-wise to my own swords happen when other people touch them. Especially when other people touch them and I don't know about it. If I'm in some kind of communal setting and I've been foolish enough to leave my swords on display and some stranger who doesn't know any better comes over and goes, "Oh, cool sword," and picks it up and puts their fingerprints all over it, "Oh yeah," and then puts it back in the scabbard and nobody tells me about that and I don't discover it for a couple of days or weeks or whatever, okay, at least I have very clear fingerprints that I can use to track them down. But, yeah. Very bad. So why do I have my fingers all over my sword all the time? Well, practicality. Based on the fact that for 45 years now, I've been around a lot of different kind of steel. And I've had my hands frequently on a lot of different kind of steel. So, you learn some stuff. So what have I learned? Well, first of all, I learned that my own physiology is a little bit strange. That my fingertips and the sides of my hands develop calluses that have a very plastic-like quality. It's almost like you put lacquer on your own skin. So, yeah, I can't use a security fingerprint reader. They never worked for me. It would probably make me a great criminal, but we won't go there. Anyway. So let's just say I have some confidence in what parts of my hand exudes goo. What I can touch the blade with and not touch the blade with and not slime it. So if I press the pads of my fingers into the flat of the steel, yeah, it's going to get wiped off. But some of the other contact I'm actually not terribly concerned with and may not even wipe it off at all when I'm done. And it's just fine. Because I also have a sense of what I've treated it with to the point where I can kind of feel what I would consider the integrity of the protective coating. And I know at what point, like pressing my fingers into it in that moment, that I've kind of violated that integrity and contaminated the surface of the steel. Which gets us into technique. When, other than showing you the blade like this, When am I likely to do that? Well, a lot, and you too, possibly, depending on how you use a sword. Let's talk about circumstances in kind of descending order of frequency. Well, the most frequent thing that puts my hand in contact with a sword, other than, yakking on to you guys, would be no-toe, resheathing. Because, there's the famous tactile way of doing it, where you use your other hand to guide it into the scabbard. Now, you're making fairly minimal contact, mostly with the back of the blade, a little bit with the sides, and it's a reasonably safe thing to do. This is actually a really high risk for cutting yourself, so you have to really know what you're doing and take it slow. But mostly the sword's making contact with the web of my hand and the side of my index finger. Two very low goo areas. Now, this is where I confess that I usually don't break a lot of sweat when I'm practicing, mostly because I tend to avoid hot and humid places. Those tend to discourage me from going out, so does sunshine. But if I am all sweaty and icky, I'm probably going to more promptly wipe off the blade. But if I'm just doing no-toe with what I feel like are dry hands, and there's a good oil coat that I can feel on there, and we'll talk about the oils that I use, I'm probably not going to rush to clean it. Might not even do it at all immediately. And I've not had any problems, believe it or not. Yeah, your mileage may vary. Okay, I don't know what your skin is like. It's probably a good thing. Anyway, let's talk about shiburi, blood cleaning. That's really just ritual. I've myth busted those, and I watched other people myth bust them and actually ruin their own swords myth busting them. Because, just even during the experiment, they left the goo on too long. Unless you've got guts hanging off your blade, that shaken thing, not really going to do a whole lot. So, I will have a cloth handy or something to wipe a blade off. Or, and again, I do not recommend you do this ever, but you will see me doing it and you will probably freak the hell out. So I'll just go ahead and show it to you now. 45 years, I have never had a problem with this. So when I bring the sword back around, before I guide it into the scabbard, I will use my sleeve and give it a wipe. And you're wondering why I didn't just open up an artery. I have never cut myself doing that. I've never even cut my clothing doing that. But again, I've spent a stupid amount of time around really sharp steel, and I'm kind of confident about handling it. So yeah, I would not recommend you do that. But if you see me doing that, no, I'm okay. I'm not bleeding. I'm fine. I'm just trying to get a little extra something off the sword before I dare put it back in the sheath. Because once you get goo in your sheath, yeah, you don't want to go there. So you'll see me do that occasionally, just so you know what that is and why I recommend you never do it. However, if I am cutting wet or gooey targets, I am going to wipe and clean and maybe even re-oil the blade thoroughly before I even think about putting it back in the scabbard. So those Iaido rituals of resheathing your sword when you're done cutting do not occur when I'm doing any kind of tamashigiri, ever. Clean the sword thoroughly before it goes back into the scabbard. So, this is especially true if I'm cutting anything wet or anything that's got like vegetable acid on it. Yeah. Very, very, very bad. The third area where my sword tends to be at risk of contact with things, especially my hands, and you may also experience these things in your own training, would be what the Europeans refer to as half swording, putting your hand on your blade as part of your technique to support the blade for certain kinds of slashes and thrusts. Now, I personally don't ever do the one where you're trying to block at a perpendicular angle. No. Deflect at close quarters, maybe. Slash doesn't have a lot of power, but you can get in there and do a little bit of carving, or support the tip for a good close range thrust. How do I do that safely, and how concerned am I about it? Sharp sword, remember. Well, I've been taught a couple of different ways that I like and hate to different degrees. One of the first ways I was taught was to do it like this. I hate this one. It doesn't feel like it's got any secure purchase or leverage on the blade, and I feel like I'm just begging for my fingers to be hacked off. So, yeah, no. So I've been taught to do it this way, with my hand along the blade, using either my thumb or especially the palm of my hand to guide that, and kind of having it a little bit between my fingers. And you'll still see me doing this because I've done it for so long, but frankly, practically speaking, I hate it. So what you usually see me doing is getting hold of the mune, the spine, and the ridge plane between the side of my index finger and my thumb. And that gives me a lot of control, especially if there's a bohea to pinch. A lot of control of the tip in those techniques, and mostly keeps my hand out of the way. So, yeah. However, you have just seen me again press my skin into, and therefore through, the oil coating on the blade. So it gets a little white. But if I'm just making light contact, I'll put the sword away without a whole lot of worry. Again, 45 years, I've kind of got a sense of when I mess things up and when I haven't. All right, let's talk about specifically then, well, what do I treat my swords with? Not shoji. I know that's going to, again, anger a lot of traditionalists, but if you've got vegetable-based oil in your oil, it sucks. Now, I will use vegetable-based oils to oil my cooking implements. I'm not going to poison myself. But they tend to be a little corrosive, and then when they dry out, they leave a sticky, stainy residue. Yeah, not good at all. And I learned this lesson after having a lot of fingerprint accidents, whether it was me not taking care of the blade or getting things on it or other people handling it. But since I stopped using traditional oils, I haven't had many problems at all anymore, and I don't really feel like ever going back, tradition or otherwise. So many, many years ago, I just simply ran out of the stuff and used what I had at hand, which were gun lubricants. And they work great because they're designed, formulated, to protect steel that's likely to be exposed to at least some elements and probably have people's hands all over it, that then might not be thoroughly cleaned off or promptly cleaned off or whatever. And that stuff does a good job. So I'm talking about things like Rem oil, and I've got some Hoppies oil that I really like. CLP. CLP is marvelous, just so you know. WD-40, not very good. It's, again, got enough like non-mineral content to it to actually dry out and break down, and yeah, so not WD-40. Motor oil I've used before. That works fine. It's basically designed to protect parts. It's a little smelly, but whatever. But doing that, like I said, it's really given me some confident protection for my steel, where I feel like I can make light contact with bare skin and not sweat it. That was a bad pun. Anyway, what's the proof behind this? Well, trigger warning, both literally and figuratively. So if you're a hoplophobe, please turn off video now or fast forward to the end, okay? Is everybody gone who's sensitive? All right. This is Murphy. Murphy earned his name, and we won't talk about that today. But tradition and ritual is important to me in firearms in terms of safety. I always check to see if the thing is loaded, and check, and check, and check, and check, and check. And even if I've checked 100 times, I still treat it as if it's still loaded. Like there's a mystery gremlin sneaking bullets into my gun when I'm not looking. I don't point the thing at anything I'm not willing to put a big old hole in. I keep my finger off the trigger until I'm ready to put the big old hole in something. But Murphy was made in 1943. Once upon a time, Murphy was Parkerized, protective coating. However, when I got him, which was about 30-something years ago, most of that Parkerization was already gone, so I just went ahead and removed the rest of it. Now, I made some attempts at home bluing, and whatever steel this is made out of is just so hard that it's resisted. I mean, it looks good for a second, but as soon as I go to wipe it off, it just wipes it wipes off. It's mostly gone within a cleaning or two. So I keep meaning to take it to a proper gunsmith and get it hot blued for real, but I never managed to get around to it. However, in the meantime, this is bare carbon steel. This is very old bare carbon steel that gets handled by my bare hands frequently and sometimes put away without a thorough cleaning job. And there's no rust on this thing. There's a little bit of patina just from straight up age, and again, that residual bluing I was using. But yeah, most of my guns as well, I'm not terribly concerned with. Now, I am concerned if they get left in some kind of humid environment or I'm wearing them in such a way that I'm sweating all over them. Yes, absolutely. They're going to get thoroughly cleaned. But hands-on steel that's been treated like this, not a huge concern. And the proof is in the result. So, your mileage may vary. But like I said, if you get yourself into a zone of confidence, shall we say, you can probably develop your own rituals and techniques for taking care of your swords, which will tell you whether or not and how much you can touch them. So, again, I'm not specifically recommending you do anything. It's a learning curve, but I hope at least I was able to be helpful, informative, interesting, amusing. And I hope to see you again next time. But for now, speaking of puns, I'm going to go polish my sword.